Okay, perfect. Okay, so accepts that I can still be in here. Excellent. So thank you, everybody, for your patience. Hopefully we will edit the beginning of that. We'll figure out how to get this here. But for those who may be joining us or for any confusion, just to clarify, we had some issues with our microphone. We are now using the microphone of a cellular device, and hopefully we will continue our meeting. So thank you to the committee, and thank you to Grace and Holly for helping with that as well. All right, we were discussing old business, B, which is the new resident welcome letter packet and the guidance on the next steps. Again, Holly, you were discussing the different options where we could look into the newsletter. I did have a question with the newsletter, but actually, while we have that, is there any updates? I think Joe said there might be some difficulty with the newsletter in the future. That's
the person that was our go-between.
okay.
Like we put all the stuff together. We put everything together, sent it to them. But we had a liaison who worked for Hometown Press, who went back and forth with us, put a list together of all of our articles once we prepared them, pictures, et cetera, et cetera. Then he turned them over to Hometown Press. That individual, unfortunately, has a very severe health issue that's going to prevent him from going any further with this project. So I do not, I mean,
I just wanted to see if it was the same individual. I didn't want to have them do that as well. Okay.
We didn't know
that's unfortunate.
Then, but we forged ahead and got everything done. So we are now wondering if that individual is going to be, if there was going to be a new person to do that, or if they're just going to do away with that position. I don't know. So we're still on track though to have it out in November of this year.
Perfect. And that's unfortunate. That's why I was just making sure I didn't want to have to impede anymore there. I think the big issue is we originally told the board $60, and then it wasn't understood that would be a quarterly fee. But in the end, I see it too as under $250 a year to have a campaign to reach new residents. If it's something that needs to be brought to the board for a vote, I'm okay doing that at a future meeting. But if it's within our budget, I hope that we can just continue to use lead space as it's
less than 100. Just guessing.
Well, we had that amount with the one. What was it was exact, wasn't it? 140. It was 140. I think it was one something exactly that we had. So yes, it wouldn't be too much. But I think if we can stick with that, and as long as that's okay, if we can check, make sure everything's good. If we need approval with the board, let's get that. And I know I talked in passing and bringing it up at our updates with the meeting that we're working on this project. They've all seen the letter, and they I know, as far as I've talked to colleagues, that they support the initiative. Definitely to reach new residents. And for anybody joining us, the new resident welcome letter is we found a system that would be more cost efficient that we can reach out to, and it gives us the new residents, new addresses that come to our township. And our hope is to reach out to these residents and give them the welcome letter, let them know all the amenities that our township has to offer, as well as meeting updates and how to get involved. So that's really the whole premise of that. So hopefully we can get that approved and good soon then. So thank you.
John, if you could resend the email that discusses how you use the website or the service for the
leads please,
getting those names, and copy Grace as well. Thank you.
Okay. And Grace, the email is,
you would send me an email as how to go back to the
Right.
So I've gone into it, but I have not created an account or done anything with it yet. So
I can get you Grace's email.
Okay.
All right. And I think another thing that we should discuss is committee, and I think we kind of did discuss this, but as we continue to move through the year here, and I think this is great. We're setting a precedent so that we'll know how to do this. So, the future committees can say, okay, this quarter we had this many. Here's how we find them. Here's how we do them. So again, it hasn't been as quick, but I think we still plan on backlogging wherever we are at that point, correct? So if we were to look at this quarter, we have those names and we would send them all out then, I guess, at once at this point. meaning we had the names for the January. The first quarter.
Yes, first,
So,
January to March.
so what we would do, and my thing is we would send them all out then together if they haven't, when we send these out as well.
I'm not sure, does it makes,
And that's what I'm saying, is it too, and I think I'm not wording this well, but yes, is it too soon? Is with the whole impetus was within a couple months when they move in, so.
right,
Will we still want to backlog, I guess is the question, and how far would we want to do that, or do we want to have that as another discussion?
I guess my question is, at this point, for those residents who moved in April,
Right,
at this point, have they gotten other communications? The magazine, the newsletter, something, but have we kind of missed that window for reaching them before anything else reached them?
mhm,
Right, and so do we kind of draw another line and say, okay, if we're gonna do this well, we may not have an October meeting, but if we're gonna do it in November,
right,
right? Do we just go back?
the full year at this
No,
point, or,
just
right.
just a couple of months, right? The 3 months that we had kind of targeted before, right? And just go for those new residents that have been September, October, November, or something like
that
that.
quarters,
Right.
right? Any other thoughts on that?
I think my feeling is we do it from the April people on and we put a letter saying, you've been here for many months. We just wanted to make sure, just in case we missed anybody or they missed anything,
Mhm.
So my recommendation is from April on.
I think that's, makes sense.
I'm good.
Okay, no, that makes sense as well, and just for further explanation, anybody who would watch this too, the purpose of the letter is we found through surveys and through looking and researching that we want to reach these people before they're already had the newsletter and whatnot, to say hello, welcome to the township, and really make it personal for that reason. Okay, so we can go back to April for that as well. Any other questions or discussions for the new resident welcome letter and packet? Okay. Thank you very much for everybody's input on that. I'm excited to move along with that too. Which brings us,
So
please.
what is the plan then? Right, so we're targeting any new residents from April through September to be reviewed and decided on in the October meeting, which we may not
Which,
have.
yeah, it sounds more like
Right.
November,
for
so,
November, okay, so
and then from that point, we would have a September through December. Do we do it all at once? Or do we want to just? It might,
so the one scenario is we full names, we're looking for new residents. April through October. To be reviewed in November and then mailed.
correct,
Now you're saying, well, if we're
At
going
that
that
point-
far into the year,
do we finish the year, and that's, yeah, and I mean, it might be worthwhile to try it with the one quarter. And see how it works, but then I guess the other question is, and since this is new. Is that something we would do in January, or would it be something we would do in December for that quarter as well? I mean, for the last quarter,
Would we have all the information in December, by December?
we wouldn't have the last remaining one, so, would we, do we wait and do it all since we're this close, or do we try to? And as John's saying, our next meeting, we would then take that opportunity to go through as we discussed.
Mhm.
I'm okay doing it with that quarter and see how it goes, and then going from there to reach those residents. If the committee agrees, but then again, it would make sense to just combine it as it's new as well.
I think we should do the quarter, so up to, would it be July, up to October, and then I guess it would be October, November, December, then in January.
That would make sense for me.
Yeah. It'd be less confusing. It's getting
Yeah,
like
the last calendar
Yeah.
quarter.
Yeah.
and go for January
That works.
distribution, yeah.
So you're saying do everything together? rather, so you do it twice or do it once? Terry's saying do it twice,
Twice.
right?
Twice,
And you're saying
yeah.
twice as well, just to
Yeah,
clarify.
yes, yes.
Twice.
And I need clarification. You're saying,
We'll do, at our November meeting, do we go through and do this, or do we wait until January to put all of them together?
which way you had to,
So far it's twice. I think I'm in agreement to, at our November meeting, we can cross out these lists. Holly has a comment here as well.
okay, so. So again, we're looking for new residents from April through October to review and establish that distribution in a November meeting.
That seems to be what we're looking. Holly, did you want to add to that?
Just sitting here and I just popped in my head. What if we did a new resident page, every single newsletter? They go to every new person in the township, no matter who it is. If you just moved into the township, you're gonna get a newsletter
But how long,
So
how
only
often does the newsletter come
twice a
out?
year. So the only thing that wouldn't be happening is if someone throws the newsletter in the garbage, but opens up an envelope instead with their name on it. Do you know what I'm saying?
Mhm.
The newsletters have their names on them as well.
Mhm.
If I had a new resident page in every single one that directed people where they needed to go, if they're a new resident, that's gonna happen twice a year.
And
And motions by mail figures out all the people in the township at that specific time, new or longstanding, and it goes to all of them now. Because we worked hard on that. Remember, Kevin, we worked hard on doing that. So is it redundancy? If someone gets a letter in the mail and a newsletter next week or next month or whatever it is,
It would be, I think you could put it in the newsletter, but actually, it's interesting you said that because I was thinking, would it be redundant for those receiving that? Somebody who's not, somebody who's been there, and somebody who's been there forever though might get this and be like, oh, here's that new resident again,
So-
pass it.
so
But I
the
think
objective was,
to make it,
as
you also
to
have
get
a new resident page on the website. You want that as well.
the,
So you're already grabbing people from two different spots.
and I think that was the purpose is what we're trying to do is because we, just even based on the survey, we realize that people receive information from so many different ways. So if we're missing somebody here, we're trying to make up for it there. We don't want to be too redundant. I think I like the idea with the newsletter. My only hesitancy with that, and again, I'm open to everybody, would be to take away from something else that could be in the newsletter that is timely then as well. And one of the reasons that we had this letter was to make a personal feeling like, oh, wow, look at this. The township reached out to thank me personally, and if it's just kind of in the newsletter, it's might not have that same, well, I might not read this because, it's everybody kind of idea. I think that's what we were originally saying. I do like the idea if we want to put it in there as well, because it is another means to reach someone who might not open up that envelope. Maybe they want to open up the newsletter. My only thoughts would be it might be, as you said, redundant. I wouldn't want to waste that space as well. Any other thoughts on that?
I think because we're so far behind doing this round, we should use the newsletter. And then talk about it again, like in January, if we want to get back on track, on track, because we haven't really been back on track. And do the letters if we so decide, but I think the newsletter is a good idea.
Okay.
I think it'll take care of then all the new residents, and we don't have to then look through lists and try to figure it out, like
So you're
back from
saying
April.
there'll be a grouping of new residents that were missing that first distribution with.
You're gonna get everybody through end of November, basically, or the middle of November
Yeah,
with the newsletter.
okay.
So if we decide in January, we want to do it for the next quarter, send out a letter, we'll just have to remember to include the December people. If we decide not to continue to use the newsletter for that,
The newsletter's take your name.
right? So it's, right.
They're printed on the
when's the
mailer
newsletter come out?
distribution.
When's the newsletter dropping?
When's the next one come out? Like, is it in
Before
spring?
Thanksgiving.
No, not, I'm sorry, I didn't say that right.
After that. June.
June, okay. So it's like June and close to December.
How long did it take John to go through the list? Because I remember we compared it to the two. How long did that take us when we did that? And I think you came with the numbers actually in hand.
when you say go through it, for the committee to go through it?
Well, when we put it through lead space, it produces, it literally will say the new ones. And when we say go through the list, what were we going through precisely? I think we were comparing it to the list that we received from the township as well, just to see if we missed any renters, but
And we crossed off some stuff.
that was
We,
the same that we're like, oh, this is a business or something,
right,
I think.
or, what we thought was an empty lot, were the $1
right.
transfers.
Yes,
right?
yes, the ones that looked obvious that were,
Those- Yeah, I think I had put in the notes, and we can go back to it. We had a set of rules. We had
Yeah.
said, okay, combine the list, and then we are eliminating these names as
Mm-hmm.
a rule. Right, and
and I don't feel it took too long to do that. That's what I was saying. I
we did
don't
it,
like, in like,
I want to say half a meeting. I mean, it didn't
Yeah.
take it long, right?
Didn't take long.
and that's the thing, that's, so again, I'm open to the newsletter, and if we want to wait until the start of next year, so to keep it consistent, still, that's a win. That's something we didn't have before, and we have an opportunity to reach them there, and it could be more established, and here we go. So I am okay with that if the committee wants to do that or feels that way as well. I'm also okay going through one more list or two in November and sending them out. I could go either way for this. I think it's worthwhile. I'm excited that we have this implemented in place. I know for sure, as we said, January, this will be easy to say, we have this. This is what we're going to do now, this quarter, this month, we're going to go through and just make sure we have those names and make that part of our meeting. If this is something we want to take to a vote, we want to, recommend, it seems like the
Well,
consensus.
if the newsletter comes out Thanksgiving,
Mhm.
right, then let's assume that it's going to capture any new residents through the end of October.
Yeah.
Okay,
We
so.
should cover that.
So if we plan to around polling names for November, December, January
That's something we
with
could do at
a-
a January
with-
meeting,
with a February drop,
right?
right? Then we kind of fill that gap, we shorten that gap for new residents from a 6-month wait for the for the next newsletter to call it a 3-month wait. Right, so if somebody moves in November, right? The next newsletter will be June, right? If we look to do something in between there, right? Then between the two efforts, and so maybe the new resident letter, only goes out twice a year.
Mhm.
Right? But, if you use a combination of both, right? The newsletter going out twice a year and the letters going out twice a year. Right? Then does that satisfy the objective of getting to new residents sooner than every 6 months, right? Or,
It almost sounds logically as though it would end up being on a quarterly basis.
Correct. I
Yeah,
mean, makes sense.
quarterly or semi-annual, depending on how much we leverage the newsletter. Right? If we're taking into account the newsletter happens every 6 months.
I think it's worthwhile that it just, for all this timing as well. I think that what it's sounding like is we're okay for the October newsletter to capture that, correct? Rather than to plan this for our next November meeting. Is that what the consensus seems to be right now?
Um,
Meaning we're okay with the welcome letter going in the newsletter to capture our audience that we were trying to hit for this October, rather than let's explore the
Right.
leads. Let's stick
If
with
we,
that. for now.
if we assume that if the newsletter is coming out in end of November,
November,
that it's got any new residents through October, right?
Correct.
And we were gonna pull names April to October anyway.
and that's what I'm saying. So rather than do that, I'm okay sticking then with the newsletter and, based on the consensus of the group, and we can explore it from there. So for right now, stick with that.
I'm gonna call on Holly for this comment.
Go
She's
for it.
dying to make.
I did not go for it, Howard.
You can take that actual letter, put it in there. Just like it's mailed to them on a full page. So it is the exact letter that would be mailed to them. I wouldn't change anything about them, just have them put it in exact like that with Keith's signature at the bottom.
And I like that, especially as it's the first time in there, that would capture everybody, garner attention to everybody else. And, maybe in a little update with communications committee, although we're sharing it at our board meetings too, but we're letting people know we're gonna have a welcome letter, and then maybe starting next year could be looking into something, okay, do we want to personalize mail it? But I'm okay with that, especially, and Holly, thank you for that suggestion. I think that really encompasses,
We have a scrolling PowerPoint presentation out there that has all kinds of events on. it.
Mhm.
Grace has done that. It looks amazing.
Yeah.
You can put something up if it says new resident, question mark. With a QR code, bam.
and that's fantastic. The thing, and then one thing that we want with the letter though, and I think this, it exceeds that goal with the newsletters, hit people or that may not have the opportunity to come out here too, not everybody's able to, so that's why.
That's why we're
Or-
doing it.
Yes, or might not know. Or might not know that we have an option to come in here, and that might drive them in as well, which is great.
Some people don't.
So I think we're okay now with for as of now, we have this come out with and thank you, Holly, for that idea. We'll have the welcome letter in our next newsletter.
Okay,
And then, and especially since, as we know, October is looking harder. Since a couple of us will not be here, so it might be the best move for our group right now. Any other comments
Okay, so
additions?
I'm gonna ask for clarification again,
Yes.
so we're on the same page, right? So the welcome letter that was drafted will be in the November newsletter. Okay. Right, and then are we targeting then a new resident mailing? Right, at some point after that?
That would be for the discussion, I think, because then we could get Jess's input as well. That's
Okay.
the hope. I hope.
Okay.
However, we might all look at
That's
the
fine, that's
newsletter.
fine.
Yeah,
Okay, so as of right now, there's no target for dropping a new resident letter in mail, right?
that is correct.
Okay.
That's.
it effectively would be a follow-on to what's gonna be in the newsletter. It would be kind of like the second iteration of that letter.
Yes.
Right,
Yeah.
but we're not sending anything in terms of when that's gonna happen.
No, well, right now the goal is then we'll have this at our November. I think it's worthwhile to discuss at a future meeting, be it December or November, say, hey, okay, this went out. What do we think about this? What are we hearing? And what would we like to do with this in the
Mhm.
future? So absolutely a future conversation.
Okay.
I think that's a great resolution. Thank you, Holly, for that as well. And it's exciting to be able to get that out to new residents. Yes, as Holly mentioned, people don't know the building. One thing we learned by going around to our facilities was that a lot of people did not know we had pools. We had a lot of, things that the township offered, so hopefully they'll get that. Anything else to add to that before we move on? Okay, moving on to new business. We have discussed some ideas, and John had accumulated all sorts of ideas that we have brainstormed, a backlog of topics that we've talked about since really 2021 now. And some of them, the start was the new resident welcome letter, which again, we have succeeded with our resident welcome packet. We're working on our special session with facility management companies, but hopefully everybody had, and as I encouraged, a moment to take a look, to go through here, kind of find some of your favorite things, maybe have some other ideas. As we all know, we have a new special projects coordinator here, so we could maybe follow up on some of these things that we weren't sure how to do in the past. If anybody would like to comment on anything that they would like to see done shortly, or something that we could explore more, or have any other ideas of how we can promote our committee as well and the township. I like, go ahead.
No, I was just gonna.
Yes. I know it's in our packet. I printed one up separate, but please take that. I have another one
Okay.
right here.
With, we talking about the webpage?
Oh, I jumped ahead. My apology. No, I jumped to new business. Yes, new resident welcome webpage. Let's go to that first. Our new resident welcome page which we can piggyback actually off of our last topic. It makes sense. Thank you, John. I jumped ahead there. Our new resident welcome webpage, and the idea for that was when we have somebody, when we have new residents to go right to our website, kind of gives a whirlwind of everything that our website has to offer. Our website explore, gives every information we need from what's happening in the township, upcoming meetings, as well as how you can get discounted tickets to various places. And our idea was to have something right for the new residents based upon the surveys and conversations we've had. A lot of people, we tackled some of the biggest questions, such as who does my trash? Where do we find this information? And what we have in front of us are 3 different options. The idea is to have a link on our webpage that will just keep clicks. We can click and go to the link of whatever it is that topics we choose to have on this. First and foremost, for everybody to see that is new, can go and visit on our webpage. And I think we had an opportunity to look at all the different options here. John, thank you for laying them out. We have options 1, 2, 3.
So the only question was about the trash,
Mhm.
right?
That was the
And-
biggest
right.
option.
And so, in the last meeting, we talked about the 3 different ways of presenting the trash collection.
Mhm.
Right? Either as a Q&A on the right side of the page, right? With this, it's hard to see, but this last paragraph down here is
Mhm.
about trash collection.
Yeah.
Right, so, this was where we added the
Right.
trash collection. That was that option of only putting it there. Okay, this option was having it as a link here,
Mhm.
right, without the verbiage. Right, and then the last option was essentially both. Right, it's having, trash collection link here, right, and this, kind of Q&A also.
Big FYI.
I was just going to say, Grace has her hand up here, so I want, before we continue, Grace.
These all look like wonderful ideas, but before you guys get any further, the township is looking into finding a new website provider for most likely the year 2025. Or if you're looking to start that process, we're already, Holly, Joe, and I were meeting with other website providers like Plus, Revive, Catapult, some other local places to kind of give an entirely new makeover to the website. Which when it comes to the communications committee and the new residents page, we will all certainly be involved in how we design that. But it is going to look a little different. So if there are things that you are certainly interested in keeping on that layout, you'll definitely be able to let us.
So,
But either way, I don't think it makes a difference, right? All we're doing is recommending something like this, right? Whether it's this format or a new design to be consistent with whatever you go, right? It's just something like this with this kind of information, right? I mean, it wasn't our intention to do page design, right? We were just mimicking what was already out there.
and I think, and that's exciting. We did a lot of research on this, and I think we've talked extensively about Civic Plus. We were familiar with the different options that has, that message people, texting, and all that stuff as well. We've actually called a couple similar townships and asked them
Right.
about that, so we had the whole breakdown. So if you need help with that too, we definitely have that. Hatfield had one. I might still have it. I just emptied some of this,
Okay,
but
so.
yeah, we're
so
gonna get off
back
topic.
to
Back to this.
the topic here. Right?
You are right with this. And
Okay.
I think what
So,
John's saying
I-
is that even if we have a new website, this will have still the basis of what we are looking for and what we decided is best.
Right.
For me, I like the trash option. I think it was number 2. Can I see this again?
Sure.
I'm okay with any of them, but I do think it was important to have them. I think, yes, I had the trash collection link because it did kind of have the information on there, but the only thing about that as well is just because the link, I believe, went to more than just the trash, right? There's more information there. I liked option 2 and I like option 3.
I like option 3.
I like option 3.
3 kind of had it laid out there, and option 2, the reason I liked it is the simplicity, but once you would have to do the work, you know, and if you're not familiar with scrolling up and down, that's what I was saying
And
there.
you figure a new resident, that's probably their main need right now. They probably have a lot of trash and they like, what do I do with, you know?
Yeah, I was actually, and as I said, I've always lived in Lower Salford, so it was never an option for trash, but that was one of the things that just quick survey, everybody said, and most residents want to know, where's the trash? And, you know, if you're coming from somewhere where you're familiar with that,
And this way that they don't have to scroll through everything, but if
Yeah.
they want more information,
Right.
they can also then click on the trash link.
no, I like option 3 as well.
Okay. Right, so our recommendation as a committee, right, is a new resident information webpage similar to this.
Right.
It's not like we're
On our
not-
website
not-
this
not like
year.
we're
or
not
new.
like we're doing the web design, right?
Right.
It's, you know, as a recommendation, it's something like this, whether that goes into the current website in this format or a new website in some different format, right? It's
And it's still, and yeah, and it has all the important things that we felt through the survey that people
Right.
are looking for, so I like that.
so then this gets to my question about, you know, how formal do we need to be about these types of recommendations? Does this go to the Board of Supervisors as the Communications Committee is formally recommending a new resident information page that looks something like this, right? And do we make that a formal recommendation?
Well, we could always do that as well. I think maybe we could have an answer right here if this is, I mean, the question will be, and I think the board might ask. Would probably turn it over to Grace and Holly here for insight. So since Grace and
Right.
Holly are here, you know, is this something that we could create this prior to the end of the year? You know, or is, because we still do have a couple months, or is this something that,
But before
could
you
take
get
with
into
you.
whether it gets created by the end of the year or not, does it need to be a formal recommendation to the Board of Supervisors?
I think it's worthwhile to mention at a meeting, because
Mention it or make it a formal recommendation?
I think this is our recommendation as the board. So yeah, I can present it as a formal recommendation. That makes sense.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay.
So, and then
Okay.
the board can decide whether to take
Then
that.
it's right, then it's their recommendation, working with whatever staff is available, et cetera, right? But
Everybody's okay with that?
As,
then?
as,
So-
as a consulting, I forget the exact term, consulting committee.
Mhm.
Right, right. We've done our job. Here's our recommendation. We formally recommend it to the board. What they then do with it, right, within the township is out of our hands.
So I guess what we can do too, is there a motion to formally recommend this to the board?
Yes.
Motion, do we have a second?
Second,
Second, all in favor of formally recommending option number 3 to the board for a new resident information page, say aye. Aye,
aye,
oppose? Okay. So yeah, John, I will
Yeah.
make sure that at our next meeting, I would discuss this, bring it up and share this with the board. And give Holly and Grace a sneak preview right here as well.
awesome.
Any other questions for our new resident webpage? Okay, thank you for that, John. And John, if you could send me, I think, I know I have this as well, but you know, make sure I have something that would be printable. I can present that easily as well. That'd be great. All right, moving on with our new business, as we pulled out earlier, the brainstorming of communication committee backlog of topics. Again, we had some technical difficulties today, so I do appreciate that. I know we have been moving along this meeting for a bit, so if anybody has any topics that stick out as to what we would like to work on next, we do have for our next meeting. We did cover most of our old business, and I think that's where we are. We're kind of, what could we pull up next year? What kind of ideas? I think one thing that I would like to move forward with, and I know it's up there as one of our ranks as well, is following up with our facilities managers. Seeing, and again, the board was had no issue with having meetings. Maybe we could reach out to them again and see if we could follow up. We did drop off information about having a meeting at
Do an
facilities.
offsite.
Right, and I think, whether it's something they want to set up for the next upcoming year, I think now would be the appropriate time to revisit that. And whether that's just going and knocking on their doors and talking to them, that does seem to be the best way to reach the managers, just because if you call the numbers, sometimes you will get the main, so they're makers there. But that's one of the ones I would like to see. I think following through with the facility managers. And it's another way, a lot of the biggest positives that they had was a lot of their residents were excited at the idea of, getting involved with the township. They, had, I know a couple of them said that they don't have the means. They're very excited to take the things that we have in our vestibule to get here. So that's one of my top. I think another top thing that we should keep in mind is our quick reference guide, as we come to the end of the year, because if we don't have a meeting in October, that's one of the things we want to make sure that we might want to assign in our December meeting for somebody to follow up to make sure we have all the right contacts for volume 3 of that as well. Anybody else have any things that stand out to them? One thing I wanted to make too, I noticed the communications poster flyer for the committee, and I know we talked with that, a couple ideas, and that kind of was like our reference letter. But one of the things we talked about was how can we increase attendance here, get people more interested, get people to our meetings and get ideas from residents. So we're excited to have a visitor today as well. But one of the any ideas or anything that we have from that, I have something I wanted to throw out there, but I wanted to see before we do that, any other favorites on here?
I was just glancing down at the speaker list of township staff or committee members who can attend resident facility meetings.
Mhm.
With 1 or 2 subject matter experts for each committee or topic. If we're talking about more outreach, where
Yeah.
we're actually, then that's certainly an avenue to,
That's something that we can
Get that
discuss.
done. Yeah.
Yeah,
yeah.
I like that. And I think that's what we want to do is put different topics for our future meetings coming up as we've
Mhm.
covered now. We're finishing up our old businesses here. That's definitely something that we can bring up there, for the draft recommended. Anything else, Terry?
I think we should update this list and say what like have another column, what we've accomplished,
That's
you know what I mean, so. Cause I'm reading through a lot of it, we've already done.
I see that we've done some of it in other ways, we might have combined a couple or took various aspects of one idea.
And where do you see that? We'll revise it or take it off the list.
And I think the communications poster flyer was that the one, and that's why I was bringing that one up, because when I saw that, I thought, is that what led to our quick reference guide? Or was that something different? And that was conceived in 2021, so that's why I wasn't sure. And that was one I thought was that our quick reference guide or was that something else?
I don't know, but we'll take it off.
I think it's worthwhile, and then maybe even having for our next topic for our next meeting is to kind of go through this list.
I think that's
As
a good
well,
idea, yeah.
together.
And then update, and then just if we've accomplished something, we should have another column saying like it's completed,
Right.
so. Make it a 5, 6 column.
I think that might be a good way to go for right now as well.
And then I think it'll make it easier to determine where we go next. Once we do that.
One thing I wanted to do too is actually ask Grace if you don't mind here too. I know we do have new avenues now of communications that we didn't have before. I actually did not know we had a Facebook till our last meeting. But Joe mentioned that we have Facebook, Instagram, so that's something that it's great for residents. How would you mind, because I don't know if everybody knows which social medias we have, just explaining any new social medias that we have as well.
An Instagram page and a Facebook page that I opened probably in the last 2 weeks. I'm hoping to get the police department because they have a much larger following to be put out on their page to follow our page, so we get more attention that way. And right now I'm just posting events and photos of what's going on in the township. Whether those things are sent to me or I get to go out and take pictures myself, and playing it by ear right now before I figure out a better content schedule.
That's great. Is there a plan to possibly post like meeting announcements and stuff like that as well in the future?
Because maybe we have so many meetings that they like more temporary posts.
That's a good call, right?
Happening for the next 24 hours, so it's not standard.
Crowding.
But that's definitely.
That's a great point. I know in the past we did explore Facebook, Instagram, and looked at various other townships, the way they do them. And the one thing, it's interesting you say that because that is one thing I noticed. You put the agenda, it gets a little too crowded though, and people, okay, they don't want to see that all the time. But that's great to have other aspects to go out as well. Anybody else have anything else on this list that really stands out? I think at this point, I think it's a good idea to go through this list at a next meeting and really tackle it out here. And again, bring some more ideas, any other ideas we have too. One thing I thought of, I was actually trying to figure out ways, because I know one of the other questions we asked last time was how do we promote our, not just our committee, but other committees as well. The whole object of the communications is to make it facilitate communication between the township and residents and find the best way to reach all the residents so that they know what is happening with the township. And one thing I thought of, and this is just to throw out there, really just tonight. I know we talked about before, but maybe we could throw it to you too as well. Maybe our committee could actually help like promote maybe a contest or something. And what I mean is something simple, say like a coloring contest or a photograph contest. Say, communication committee is helping, promote a photo contest, a color contest, and encourage people to either go on the website and download the coloring page to color, have some copies here. And, maybe something like in a month or two, and the winner would have their artwork displayed here. Something that could just go through the thing, or maybe even a little frame. I know that for me, and I asked my kids, what would you do? Oh, that would be awesome. Yeah, and I said, well, you guys would not be eligible. However, however, the idea, I just want to get arranged from them. That to me as a child and, with kids in school, I would bring them out. I would want to come up, look, let's go to the office and see the artwork here. Just something to bring people in
So
here.
how does that fit in with the objectives of this committee?
I think it's and that's a good question. One thing that I would think is a way to promote the communication committee this way is trying to, okay, this communication
But I don't
committee is
think our
trying to reach different
objective is to
people.
promote us as a committee.
Mhm.
I think, and if I go back in enough minutes, I think somewhere we actually, drafted actually what we thought our objective was.
Right.
But if our objective is to improve communications to township residents, or as Holly always reminds us, recommend ways to improve communications
Mhm.
to residents, how does that fit in?
And my reason was not so much to promote us, but promote the township. Like, so my thought process was, how
Now,
do we,
again,
right,
objective is not to promote the township, it's
to promote communications, right? And so it gets there, I promise, real quick. Okay, so we're reaching out on different platforms. We're trying this. We saw the text message. Now the survey may not be 100% accurate because we might not be reaching people who could say, hey, this is our preferred method because we're not using that method.
And
My
again, it's
idea.
not us.
It's
doing
not
that,
us.
It's the township.
township,
right?
and-
Our objective is to,
So we could recommend, is what I'm saying. We could recommend if we do a contest or something like this, we encourage people to go out and share it. So for example, I don't know, as Grace implied, the police have a lot more followers. Maybe if we had something like this, or the township had something like this, tag the township or whatever, might have now a whole new audience that might not have known that there was a Facebook. And they might be like, oh, okay, look at this. They're sharing this picture, this and that. And I think that was kind of my idea is, we have these means. How do we let people know this? And it's just something to throw out there. That might not be a topic
So-
for this committee then as
so
well.
if I understand you,
Mhm.
what I'm hearing is you're gonna try and drive traffic to some site, whether it's Facebook or the township website or something, via this contest. So,
That was kind of, yeah, the idea.
and
Just something that, and the way I saw it, John, was just to kind of throw out here something that, hey, we could say, And I think that's why I meant to say, hey, the committee, kind of pushes it, would more of a recommendation, something else that we can do. Maybe we could have that opportunity to promote different things. So for me, I just know, like, in passing, once I heard, I don't use Facebook. It's not something I do. So I came home. I do know, some of my neighbors, and I was outside and they're always on, I say, hey, did you know the township's on Facebook? No, I didn't know that. So that kind of idea is what kind of spawned that. And that was literally tonight, coming on my way here, I saw my neighbor finishing up the grass. And, I said, hey, we're on social media. I'm like, oh, I didn't know that. So then on the way over here, I was thinking about that. I was like, okay, what do we do here? I was talking to my kids about it. Like I said, they're saying goodnight to them, threw the idea out there. That's really what I thought. Some other idea of things we could put out there. So not saying we need to organize a contest, but something we could suggest down the line as well, of just trying to get the public engaged more, like us going to a facility, having that, there's people and those residents that might be like, well, I'm not paying attention to what's going on in my township, but our apartment complex, the facility just said, hey, we're having a township meeting here. Let me start paying attention. And I think that's just kind of the idea that I was thinking there. So just throwing it out there for some other ideas of, I guess what I'm saying is we could have different contest events that could promote people to be more involved and see what's the township. Because then they come, they see the QR code up there and they say, wow, that is a good idea. Scan something like that and they're hooked on that. It's just an idea with that. But
So I think, personally, I think it does fall into kind of our objective to brainstorm, come up with suggestions to the township, recommendations to the townships on how to improve usage of all the communication channels,
Mhm.
right? I mean, what ideas can we put forth as recommendations to improve residents using the websites or Facebook or the resident portal or whatever, right? And if one way of encouraging residents to those communication channels is some kind of contest, right?
Mhm.
Then I would say it makes sense, where it might fall into kind of where, what our objectives are. But I think we have to keep remembering that, what our objectives are as a committee,
Mhm.
right? And make sure that, what we do kind of falls into
Yeah.
that objective.
No, I think that's a great point. And, be it a contest, be it anything else, that's something that me brainstorming here, hey, I threw it out there for next week. I will have it more defined as a way we could do that. And that makes sense. It's
Yeah,
perfect there as well.
and like I said, I mean, whether it's some kind of contest that drives that traffic to the various communication channels, right? Or it's a guy in a chicken suit standing out on the street corner,
Spinning a sign there.
spinning a sign. And it's, I mean, what ideas do we have to drive residential traffic to those communication channels? And how does that translate to recommended actions by the township, the board of supervisors and the township?
Sense. So I think it's worthwhile to put it together and, explore that next week, or not next week. You may come next week if you like, but we don't have a meeting next week. But to put it together for our next meeting then as well. Thank you. All right. Anything else anybody would like to add as well? All right. I know we had some technical difficulties in the beginning when we had our public discussion, so I will offer a public discussion, if it's okay with the committee, one more time. If anybody would like to add anything online or in our audience, any comments, suggestions? Okay. With that said, our next meeting is scheduled for October 18th, but I do know that John, you will not be able to be here, and Terry, correct? And Jess is still finishing up her class, so seeing as it'll just be Jean and I think it's appropriate that we cancel our October meeting and shoot for November.
The 16th.
16th October. Thank you. My phone's over here, so I'm feeling for it. That's usually where I pull out my calendar. So I cannot tell you what November is, since they're
20th.
November
So-
20th. It's on my schedule, I know, to be here the third Wednesday. So whatever it would be, I think that's what we'll shoot for our next meeting, November 20th.
Okay.
Okay,
That's good.
all right. Again, thank you, everybody, for your patience, and thank you for being here as well. Thank you to Holly. Thank you, Grace.
Thank you.
With that, do we have a motion for adjournment?
I move.
Terry, Jean second, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? All right, thank you, everybody. Great meeting. And thank you for, I guess,
Thank you,
with
Grace.
this.